All right, welcome to Friday 15 with a very cool-looking Andy Hoare, just back from. And you were in Miami, is that right?
That's right.
All right.
Welcome to Miami.
Ooh,
Bienvenido a Miami.
yeah, baby. Did you do some salsa dancing? Yeah. All right. Well, hey everyone, this is Friday 15 with Master B2B. Brian Beck is my name. I'm here with Andy Hoare. Thank you all for joining us today. We've got an exciting session today. Andy was on the road this week. He was in Miami. Yes, señor. Sí, señor. Seguimos en español. And I was in Charlotte, North Carolina at the
I got the better end of the deal.
Well, Charlotte's a nice city, dude. It's a great city. I
There's no
liked it.
ocean there.
I know, but it's clean. It's nice. It's a
That's
great
true.
city.
That's true.
No, but Miami's cool, man. So good. What's the report from the field?
Conference season is alive and kicking, and you and I both know this is when it starts to get hot and heavy. Next couple of months, big time.
Yeah, I was impressed with the companies that were out. At this, I was at the Industrial Supply Association. I heard an economist speak, which was really interesting about the state of the economy and where we're going. This guy is predicting he's predicting a depression in 6 years. Interesting. I don't know how these guys come up with this stuff, but anyway, maybe it's true. So we'll see. But hey, Friday 15 today, and we got some exciting news. And Andy, I don't know, let's roll into this because we got some exciting stories to cover. Let's get our little music going there. There it is, some breaking news. Andy, did you see this week? Inside Amazon's secret operation to gather intel on rivals. What the heck is this about, Andy? This staff went undercover on Walmart, eBay, and other marketplaces as a third-party seller called Big River, and the mission was to scoop up info on pricing, logistics, and other business practices. This sounds so Amazon.
Yeah,
Andy?
look, this reads like a spy novel. I mean, honestly, this is from a new book called what's it called? The Everything War by a Wall Street Journal reporter.
Yeah.
And it's talked to hundreds and hundreds of former Amazon employees, partners, ecosystem members, et cetera, and kind of pieced all this together and determined that Amazon was actually participating in rival marketplaces under the auspices of Big River Services. And they were Amazon employees, but they didn't identify themselves that way. There were a bunch of lawyers involved, telling them exactly what they can and can't do. So I know they got the legal side of this right, but they probably got the moral and ethical side of it very wrong. But you got to hear some of this stuff. So, we all know about them copycatting products, right? Everybody does that. And the brain sucks where they invite people in and pretend to want to invest in them and then steal all their best ideas and dump them by the side of the road. Every company does that. It's not nice, but they do it. This, however, I've got some stuff written down. They had set up something called Project Curiosity, where they went to rival. Yeah, they went to rival events. They actually pumped a lot of products on Amazon's own website to increase their seller status, so they will qualify for like pro status on eBay and Rakuten and other sites, so they could get pricing discounts. And they were learning basically about the pricing methodologies of all these companies. This is borderline. I mean, the thing is, they can actually technically do this, but they weren't allowed to share this information internally. So they were getting proprietary information from companies like FedEx about pricing and logistics, and they were sharing that information within Amazon, which was where they made the big mistake. But I got to tell you, they had no intention of making money doing this. They were hiding who these people's identities were. But you know how it got blown? Not only did this reporter find out about it, but LinkedIn. These people could not fake who they really were. So they were actually working for Amazon. And in public filings, which they also can't fake, they had to put the address of these fake companies. If you dig really deep into it, which some people did, when you got down to the last page, it would say corporate headquarters, and it would have Amazon's address.
Okay, Andy, this is news. Why? Because in this world we live in today, it's Amazon, and they're the behemoth. Retail's been doing this stuff for years, dude. I mean,
I think the difference, though, I think there's one big difference. Amazon's a marketplace. Amazon's a retailer, but it's also a marketplace. And you can't really put your thumb on the scale when these people are selling through your marketplace. it's definitely borderline
Oh,
unethical.
come on, Andy. You have to indict all
Um,
of retail. I
but
can
more
recall.
importantly, it's terrible PR because third-party sellers are now thinking, aha, I
Yeah,
always
whatever.
suspected this. They're
Ah,
using our sites, but the operational, and you know what ended up blowing it? Not only did some of these public filings, but the employees themselves at Amazon started feeling really uncomfortable living like a dual wife as a like a Mossad agent and at the
dude,
same time working for Amazon.
the only reason this wasn't happening, this type of exact thing with marketplace wasn't happening earlier, is because it wasn't a business model. This has been happening for a century. I mean, Andy, I can tell you stories from my retail days. I mean, we would send people with private label on our private label brands into other retailers, to trade shows, I mean, competitive research has been happening for thousands of years. I mean, this is not news. In fact, I mean, I no, let's bring it back home to B2B distributors. One of the things we do at my Amazon company in SIBA, we tell distributors to do this with Amazon. And guess what? They don't even have to hide it. They just go launching a program on Amazon and they learn everything about how Amazon
Right.
works.
And that's fine. But they're not misrepresenting themselves as something they aren't. Again, when you're the marketplace and the seller, that's a real problem. But
Okay.
anyway, this is
All right.
only the first because there was a story a couple of
Okay.
days ago as well
Yeah. What's this?
about another Amazon operation. And this is more on the B2C side. But again, they're starting to see a pattern here that's been around for a while. Short story, Amazon hired an executive from Trader Joe's because they wanted to crack the code because Trader Joe's does not sell online.
Okay.
And so they wanted to create something called Wickedly Prime is what they called it.
Okay.
A food brand, and they thought Trader Joe's has got this cult following, let's do it, right? They didn't know what it was though because they couldn't access stuff online, so they thought, well, we'll hire somebody. They pressured her into sharing sales information, margin information. They put black bags covering the doors. They had all these Trader Joe's uh food, which is totally fine, but what ended up happening here was interesting. She refused to do some of the stuff, but one of her colleagues reported to the legal team at Amazon that
Yeah.
this is something they shouldn't be doing, and her boss got fired. So the guy who actually hired her to do this stuff and pressure her to do it, I think it got fired because they got caught. But so there is a bit of a moral, ethical line that they won't cross. But I mean, the story is laden with other narratives about how Amazon does this all over the place.
Okay. So nobody, I mean, people never hire anybody from competitors. That never happens anywhere
Yeah,
except on
but you know what? You can hire people for competitors, but I lived in Silicon Valley there for 10 years. And if you took information from a company, I mean, you probably do like GLG and stuff like that. And they make you sign all these documents saying you're not sharing specific company
right.
information. There's a line you can't cross. General understanding, yes, but sharing specific data from a competitor with
Didn't you
another
just say the
company,
boss
yeah.
got fired? I don't know. To me, this is all about, okay, so he crossed the line. Okay, so some guy, some person crossed the line at Amazon. They got fired because they crossed the line. Okay, fine. Look, people do this all the time. They hire from competitors. One of the reasons to do that is because they have expertise. Now, yes, sure, there's certain data you can't really
But
reveal.
sharing margin information, that's pretty
I
bad.
don't know,
That
Andy.
kind of
I don't.
violates some non-disclosure
I don't know,
agreements.
man. I think you've been living under a rock. This stuff's been happening forever. You want to put all of retail on trial because they've been doing these things forever. Indict them, okay? I mean, you want to go run the FTC, Andy? Because that's
Yeah, but this makes a great point. Is Amazon a retailer or a marketplace? That's another discussion for
all
another
right.
day.
We got to
You
cover
can be
that one
one or
later.
the other, but if you're going to be
Yeah.
both, there's I think a special standard. Okay, so let's talk about this week.
Let's talk about something this week because we're already 10 minutes in. Oh my goodness. Here's the topic. What's the best way to recalibrate your digital strategy? Right. Last week we talked about the timing, right? So we did a poll here, Andy, and we want to, this is the question. There's not much debate about when, right? Or what causes the revisiting. I mean, you look at the data from our earlier poll last week, which said, hey, how often should B2B companies revisit their strategic plan for digital? It was pretty clear. There's a cadence here, once a quarter or anytime, really business changes happen that signal a change. But, it's the when might be established, but the how to do it, right, Andy? That's the piece that we want to get into this week.
Yeah, it raises that larger question, like, okay, I know how often I should do it, but how should I actually
Right.
do it? How do I recalibrate if I discover that there are things I need to change? And so, we talked about this. This is not an exhaustive list, but it's at least these three questions. How do you know if your strategy is working? I know that sounds like first graderish and Crayola, but you'd be
Right.
surprised how many companies don't
Right.
actually know if it's working or they can't quantify it. So we'll talk about that. Who should lead the review process? This is the insider versus outsider question. We actually did a poll on this. We'll talk about that too. And then
Yep.
ultimately, great. So you think you know what's working, not working. You've got the right person in charge of leading the review. You know the time frame, the cadence, like we talked about. But how
Right.
do you prioritize the changes? We have a little framework we're going to share about that one. So let's dig into each one of these.
Right. So how do you know the strategy is working, Andy? And some thoughts here. I mean, reviewing objectives, right? Certainly, are you against where you are? How have you performed? And if, obviously if you're missing profit and sales goals, that's a big piece. But what else here?
Well, do you even have goals? I mean, we talked about companies that don't really have
That's
objectives.
true.
So,
Right.
number one, what are the objectives, and are you meeting them? That's a kind of a first pass. Second one, and this is the most important one, is you got to measure your activities. Let's say you have some goals, but how do you know how you're performing against those goals? The big three have always been, customer satisfaction, cost effectiveness, and then revenue. Are you generating, in particular, incremental revenue, not exclusively, but how are you performing quantitative and qualitative? And it's got to be customer centric. And the last one is, how do you compare to your competitors? I mean, I'm not a big fan of benchmarking everything, because then I think you're just the fastest turtle in the race. And I don't think that's really the way to go. I think it's better to have, you know, independent objective standards that you're measuring yourself against. But for all intents and purposes, you got to, measure yourself against your direct competitors, industry pure plays. You cannot exclude them. They may have a different model, they may have different metrics, but they're competitors. I think there's also best in class examples like Amazon. Ultimately, everybody has to compare themselves in terms of like really the customer experience to them. But do not forget, you can get great competitive intel from partners and customers. And if you're Amazon, apparently from everybody else.
Well, according to you, Andy, you wouldn't have a Project Curiosity. You just have a project crawl into a cave and hide because you don't want to go see what anyone else is doing, right? Right. Anyway, yeah, you got to benchmark. You need to know how you stand against competitors, but ultimately, you're right. I mean, the customer needs to come first. So I think it's clear. If you have a plan, I think it's clear to folks, when they are, that whether the strategy is working or not. But then when we get to the point of, you want to revisit the plan, who should lead it? This is a question that we have some debate on, right?
Yeah, we run into this a lot. Companies have a kind of a default position that somebody internally should do it because they're going to execute internally. And then, frankly, other companies are just the opposite, where they're like, no, we don't trust ourselves. We need an outside view. I can't tell you how many times in my career,
Yeah.
the last 15 years at Forrester and Paradigm and Master B2B, when I've been asked to come in and talk to a company and essentially tell them exactly what the person who
Yes.
hired me has
Yeah.
already told them.
Yes.
But I'm told, they'll listen to you, they won't listen to me. And I'm like,
Right.
God, this kind of begs a question about what's wrong with this company if they don't respond to, the right information, especially if it's backed by data. I mean, if you're
Well,
presenting real data, why do you need someone from the outside to come in and present the same data?
the root of that is, and Andy, I've got asked the same question so many times, whether it's, B2B commerce, Amazon, whatever, it's the strategies there. I think a lot of it has to do with a view across businesses, across industries. You and I, as sort of industry people, quote unquote experts. I mean, people will ask us to say those things because we're not vested, right? And that's the outsider perspective, and that's why a consultant can be helpful, is because you have that perspective of. So I hear you now. Yeah, but you're right. I mean, there some internal dysfunction around. Well, is this guy just trying to, or gal just trying to get their thing going? Are they self-interested? So the VP of e-commerce is just trying to get more investment for themselves around this particular issue, that sort of thing, and advance their own interests at the cost of everyone else's, right? Because you can only invest in so much.
Well, and there's some, pros and cons quickly. The insider knows the system and the people. We have this on screen for our podcast listeners. But there's also kind of a questionable will to change. I mean, if you're
Right,
part of the problem, so to speak, what are you
right,
going to do? Reveal that you're the problem? I mean, there's a bias against doing that. And the outsider, like you said, can kind of bring, a broader perspective, isn't beholden to the internal systems. But there's also a steep learning curve because you don't know the people, you don't know the internal workings. We can
Right.
question whether that's valuable or as valuable as companies think it is, but it's certainly important. You need to know how things can get done. So, but we did a poll on this. We'll share in a moment to let people know what people thought. But this is the most important part. Okay.
How do you prioritize, right?
How do you prioritize this stuff? So let's say you've figured out what you're good at, what you're doing well, how you're performing against your strategy. You've got the right persons or people involved in kind of executing on the change. But how do they actually decide what to do first?
Right.
We think there are basically three things. Again, not an exhaustive list, but three things that everybody should map these priorities to. One is, what's the return on investment time frame? Is it short term? Is it long term? You can argue that one is not necessarily better than the other, but you need to figure that out because there's a reality here around money. Second one is, what's the size of the benefit? Is this a small win or is this a big win? Again, there's value in both. And the last thing is, does this give you competitive differentiation? And so I'll give you an example. One thing that we've talked about here is like better search. Let's say you do this analysis, you figure out that your search on your site is just not up to snuff. It's not good enough, objectively and subjectively. And so you say to yourself, okay, what's the ROI timeframe on this? Well, it's very quick because we're going to see conversion rates go up immediately once this is in place. So, and we can do it on a monthly basis, kind of using discretionary funds as opposed to a big capital investment.
Right.
So this is a win on ROI timeframe. Size of benefit, huge. I mean, revenue, incremental revenue, new markets.
Yep.
Big check. The last one might be in question though, because it could be that you're not actually going to differentiate. You're just going to achieve parity or even just catch up with everybody else. So maybe that's a small check. So you look at it and go, check, check, small check, or maybe an X. Then you have to say, what's the opportunity cost? If we do this, what could we do with those dollars instead? And there's other stuff. You could have stuff that the benefit's big, the differentiation's big, but it's going to take forever to get the ROI on it. And you got to consider that too, right?
Well, I think you also have to think about the customer first in all of this. Andy, we just got a comment in from David Rollo, which thank you, David, for this comment. He says a couple of questions. He say revisit the digital strategy. Does that include how you staff for it? Can you elaborate how to optimize staffing strategies that might help reduce the I think he probably means increase the bottom line on his P&L. Andy, David raises an interesting point. I mean, it's, you think about AI, right? And AI is a signal that you need to revisit your digital strategy. Great point to what David just mentioned. Listen, that has implications for cost to serve. That has implications. That has an ROI in terms of number one. Does this mean that you can use a tool like AI to make your people more efficient? Right. And when we looked at the polls and all the data that's coming around AI, the number one use case that the reason people are investing, I think it was a Forrester poll, they found late last year, is efficiency of staff and delivery of projects and content and all the things that AI can help accelerate. So yes, I think staffing tools or changes in the market can lead to this kind of a change or shift in digital strategy and say, hey, it's time to look at this. And it has, these prioritization, attributes here, these three we just described, it can impact all three of these, right? So yes, David, good question and comment. Thank you for that. I think we, that's just another point we can, you would tackle as it relates to, to what should cause you and how to do it. Now, when you think about how to do it with an AI tool, or AI approaches, you will need most likely some external help in that, because that, there's a lot of ways to skin the cat with that. There's technology, there's also approaches and how you do it. And then there's change management questions too, right?
Well, and I'll just say the third staffing strategies is the third rail of all this stuff. I was on a panel the other day and somebody asked me, what is that people are not doing that they should be doing based on what's happening in the marketplace? And I'm like, rethinking their model.
Right.
Bayer, the German pharmaceutical company, just announced recently that they're getting rid of a bunch of people in the middle management layer. And they're going with like little teams, 4,000 to 5,000 teams that are going to organize around use cases. And it's a very interesting idea. It's either going to be a smashing success or an abysmal failure, but it does kind of make you wonder, massive change in the market, customer interaction, et cetera. But nobody's changed their organizational model in like 100 years. And so, maybe this is the last thing to touch because it's the most controversial and it's the one they least understand. But I completely agree. This is one that has been way below the radar for too long. Companies are not designed for the market we have today.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole nother Friday 15. Let's look at our poll here because we're running past.
Yeah.
What's the best way to start revisiting your digital strategy? We asked our LinkedIn network this, and interestingly, 41% said bring in an outsider consultant, followed by create an internal task force. And then the other two choices were appoint one person or the executive, like the VP of e-commerce, should lead the effort. That was for only 14% each. So our community is saying, Andy, that, hey, you should bring in somebody with an outside perspective, which is interesting.
Except that if you add up the other three, those are all internal ones, and it's
Yeah.
like 60-40. So there are two stories here. One is that explicitly they say bring in an outsider, but implicitly they're implying that they want to do this internally. And I tell you, these internal task force, I've not had much success seeing anybody make those things. I've not seen anybody make those things work. And because what ends up happening is it becomes a place they can just kick the can down the road. Look at politicians do it all the time. When there's something they don't want to deal with in the present, let's form a task force. And then we can have the task force, like it's an independent entity. And then we can blame the task force if we don't like the result. I'm like, what?
Yeah, exactly. All right. We're way past our Friday 15, Andy. Let's do a couple quick announcements here. Minneapolis, we have coming up on April 24th, an executive roundtable and dinner there. It's going to be a great group. I think we have over
sold out, completely full. Yeah.
Awesome. Then we have some dinners. We'll be at the B2B Online Conference in Chicago in early May. Excited for that. We have a couple slots left for dinner. So if you're on site and you're a practitioner, we'd love to have you join us. And then we have another roundtable coming in Denver at the end of May 21st. So Denverites, people in that area, please let us know. We have some spots available. We have our summit coming up on June 4th. We are about to start a waiting list for this. So if you're interested in a practitioner, please let us know ASAP. Go to our website, Master B2B, click on events. You'll see the Mindshare Summit. I want to get signed up for that. You can submit an application to join us there. And then our forum, as always, Andy, is a great place for people to network. We're seeing all kinds of activity. In fact, this weekend, I don't know if you noticed, but we had a lot of back and forth on a bunch of different topics this week. Practitioners weighing in and helping each other with resources, ideas on platforms and agencies and all kinds of good stuff. So great place to be, free for practitioners only. Go to our website, click on forum. You'll see the application there. And of course, our podcast, this is available as a podcast every week, Friday 15. You can go to Spotify, Google Play, or Apple and find it, or our website. You can also find our podcast available for you. So any last words, Andy, before we end our Friday 23, I think, something like that?
Nope. I'll be in Minneapolis next week, moderating the roundtable. So looking forward to that. And I'll give you a report from the field when I get back.
Awesome. We'll see you guys next week on our next Friday 15. Thanks for joining today.